Hey guys, it's been a while since I purchased these two bikes. I have the Polarna M4 with a 750 watt motor and the Lectric XP with the 500 watt motor, which is my wife's bike. I've ridden both quite a bit. My bike, the Polarna, the black one, I actually used to take my daughter to school pretty much every morning. We also use these bikes whenever we go on RV trips. So far we've used them on numerous trails and also at the beach quite a bit. So I guess I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons of each one. I'll try to keep it pretty quick. But basically, the Lectric XP, if I would have done it all over again, I probably would have gotten two of the Lectric XPs. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the 750 watt versus the 500 watt, you really don't notice the difference. I use both of these bikes to pull a kid's trailer. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it pulls them no problem at all. You can't even notice the difference. The Lectric has the motorcycle style throttle, where the Polarna has just the trigger on the left side, which I thought was kind of odd at first. Now I think it's pretty normal. It doesn't really make a difference to me, and I actually have no preference there. One thing I will say is a downside to this is sometimes if I'm dropping my daughter off at school, I can lean over, and sometimes I've hit this with my chest, and it kind of lurches forward a little bit. So you just have to get used to that, knowing that it's there, and once you do that, then it's fine. There is one issue with the Polarna, which I'll mention right off the bat. If you have done any research on these bikes at all, you should know that the rear fender on these bikes, I took mine off, but it's typically clipped on here, and it's metal. It looks just like the front fender. And there's an L bracket that goes onto that fender. It's very brittle. I don't have it here with me, otherwise I'd show you, but you can go online and check out exactly what I'm talking about. But I've seen them crack before. A lot of people, it's just from the fatigue and the vibration of the tires and the bike moving around. So when that cracks, when that L bracket cracks, there's actually been numerous people that have had some pretty serious accidents. So that's what they reported anyway. And so what happens is that bracket cracks, the fender rolls forward, gets stuck underneath the tire, and you end up on the ground in pain. So I didn't have that happen to me. I actually looked at my bracket, and mine was in perfect condition. But I went ahead as a precaution and pulled it off anyway, because I could definitely see how that could happen. And having a rear fender wasn't that critical to me anyway, because as you can see, I have these bags on the back. So if I'm riding in water or something like that, it's not gonna splatter up on my back. And it doesn't go back much further than this anyway. So if my kids are back there in the trailer, they have some type of protection back there. So while we're back here, there is a noticeable difference. You'll notice that the Polarna has a tail light on it, where the Lectric only has a reflector. This is a functioning tail light too. So when you hit either front brake or rear brake, it does light up. So that's kind of a really nice safety feature. And let me actually go back to that fender. So I mentioned the L bracket there, and that's what it's held on by, along with there's two rods. When the fender's here, there's two metal rods that go back and hang on to this rear bracket back here. Similar to what we have going on here. So there's that rod that goes onto the rear of the frame, but in the front, you can see that Lectric, I don't know if they already had that issue or what, but the mounting for this fender is a lot more robust. So it has a bolt that goes directly into the fender here, and it goes straight through. So there's I think there's a nut on the other side, or maybe I think the nut is on the rear side. And then they have an additional one over here. So this fender is not going anywhere. It's definitely a lot safer than the brittle mounting that the Polarna has. Now some people have kept their rear fender, and they've just removed that brittle bracket, and instead they've mounted a more rigid L bracket. You can get it at any hardware store, and that'll keep it nice and secure, so it's not going to go anywhere. Besides, I mean, that's the only safety issue that I've heard about for these bikes. Other than that, this bike's been great. The Polarna is about 10 pounds heavier, and it is noticeable. So that's one of the reasons me using these in RV quite a bit. That 10 pounds is pretty significant. It's difference between 60 and 70 pounds. So, and that's with the battery in. So, I mean, it can be a little bit more to lug around. And I put my bikes in the back of a Jeep, so it's not super easy to get in there. But I just would have gotten 2 of the Lectrics. It packs up a little smaller too. The Lectric packs up a little smaller because it has the 3-inch tires, and this is the newer version of the Lectric, the XP 2.0. So the tires are 3-inch versus the Polarna 4-inch. As far as ride quality, you can't tell the difference even with the Polarna that has the rear suspension. They're both really comfortable, and Lectric does have the option where you can actually purchase the bike with an upgrade for the rear or for the seat post. It has a suspension seat post. You can pretty much do that after the fact with any other company, so it's not that big of a deal if you don't get it with Lectric. But they do offer that option, which is kind of nice. They both have similar racks on the back, so no issues there. And I guess the other downside that I've noticed with the Polarna, I mentioned that was pretty much the only one before, but this screen is really, really nice when it's lit up. It looks a lot nicer than the Lectric, actually. But the downside is that if you wear polarized sunglasses, this screen is worthless. You can't see it at all. So where the Lectric just uses your more traditional old school screen, and this one you actually can see no problem. So I mean, if you plan on looking at your screen a lot when you're riding, which I don't know why you really would, then that's definitely a downside, but I think it's just kind of a nice to have. You really don't even need a screen on these bikes unless you really care how fast you're going, or I guess you need to know how much battery you have left. But you know, these things go such a long way, it's not really an issue unless you're using this to commute 20 miles or something like that every day. They get about, I'd say on average, I've probably gotten between 40 and 50 miles per charge. So, you know, having enough battery is you're always pretty much going to have enough battery no matter where you're going, unless you're using this long distance.